From whence came these former things? These things that are the shape of that which is to come. The old cities and the elder world, the old arts and craftsmanship, all that is now in the archives of the dim and distant past. Yet the present civilization as a bubble has risen to the surface with all of the glitter and glamour of manifestation, the lure of the hour that saith unto man, Come and behold the kingdoms of this world. For in my power are all the kingdoms of this world, and I will give them unto thee. The bubble, precious ones, is but a reflection of the real, not truly made in its similitude or symmetry. Coursing through the consciousness of mankind today are the putrid manifestations of darkness and shadow. That which men call light is often but their own darkness, which they love and prefer rather than the light. But I have seen the cities of eld, the magnificent spiral towers reaching toward the sun, the rainbow stairways of God magnificence, when substance was fused into glass hard as steel, endowed with color rays, with translucency, showing forth the splendor of inherent atomic light energy within the stone itself, iridescent jewels of God magnificence, cities constructed out of the energy of the sun and fused into beauty beyond the dreams of man today. And yet they reach, they aspire to, they long for, and they hope for. But their hopes are distant dreams, never to be proven as reality until they shall understand the meaning of constructing spires of divine consciousness. For the mind that men use today is but a borrowed mind, and they have perverted it, and institutions of learning have become centers of perversion, where wisdom's ray, in its very manifestation of inversion, is but a miasma of word pictures, telling mankind nothing except to examine the fabric of their own thought. And because they are limited by their own thought and the fabric thereof, they are limited also by their own consciousness, which possesses the power to expand but does not, which possesses the power to perceive but does so only in a limited human way. Men aspire to the stars in thought, and their hearts are stirred by the possibilities of manifestation. They desire to make the journey round the planetary circle, and they think in terms of spatial exploration, whereas the space of the divine consciousness that created them, that is within the microcosmic world of thought and feeling and of divine aspiration, locked within the seed atom of their heart, continues to push forward through the earth and the human density, and to desire to illumine man as to the true nature of being. But this is denied mankind by themselves, and their consciousness is thus self-limiting. We plead then to those who are able to understand our words, at least in part, to recognize how that this is indeed a day of opportunity for all, a day when the great power of wisdom's ray, pulsating here at Lake Titicaca, may expand out into the cosmic ethers and surround the entire planetary body as a swaddling garment of Christly illumination. What is it then that holds mankind bound? And what is it then that prevents the wisdom ray from expanding? Is it not the opacity of rejection which mankind have in their consciousness? Yea, I tell you it is. It is the opacity of rejection. For their own minds tell them that the realities of God are not real because they are invisible, and because they are not attested to by the men of letters of this age, the men of science, the men of wisdom, the men who have taken the credit for the culture of the world in its present time, do not put their stamp and seal of approval upon ascended master law, upon cosmic law, upon the laws of the universe. And men and women, as sheep for the slaughter, continue to follow in the pathway of those materialistic-minded men and women who see no further than their noses. Let me tell you then that the pathway to achievement must be given to those of mankind who are ready to receive it by reason of humility of heart. And I know of some cases where we have of necessity elected to illumine an individual whose mental body was far less developed than some of the scientists of the world, but the heart quality of the individual was very great, and there were no barriers to the acceptance of the divine ideal. Therefore, we found a welcome mat awaiting us, and we found entree into their world, and we found receptivity, and we were able to raise them in the span of a very short time into a mental state where their mental body was developed even beyond the capacity of some of the scientists who had rejected us. Why then do you suppose the world is not more illumined than it is today? It is because there are not enough receptive hearts. And why is this so? It is because men fear lest they be thought ignorant. And in their desire and thirst for knowledge, they go to drink at the fount of the world's knowledge, and they do not recognize that the knowledge of universal law, of that which man has not yet externalized, is a greater measure by far than 1,000,000 times the knowledge which man today has externalized upon this planetary body. Why do you suppose that the word went forth by the Lord Christ in Judea, "Woe unto you, ye lawyers"? Do you think that today, or even in that time, that there were no honest men whatsoever among the lawyers? Why do you suppose that the charge went forth? Beloved ones, the consciousness of men in craft is often very complete and smug within their own world of conceit. They suppose that because they have a little knowledge, that they have all knowledge, and they know not, nor understand not, how that the knowledge that is hidden from the eyes of the wise and prudent is revealed unto babes by the great cosmic law, even babes of humility, whose open hands and open hearts are chalices of receptivity into which the great cosmic law can be poured. And I see them now as avant-garde to the new age. I see them as apostles and priests to the new age. I see them as architects and builders, as men of culture and dream design, men who dream with God to create by universal law the substance spun from the rays of the sun itself, that shall show mankind how to construct and build by light, and how to pour out from their hearts' energy the fires of dedication and devotion, and make them to become a living flame. The mind is aflame with truth when the mind is devoted to truth and to receptivity to truth and to rejection of error. And rejection of error is as important as acceptance of truth. For if mankind shall become a funnel, as many are, precious ones, to just pour knowledge down the drain of consciousness, whether it be good or ill, there is no discriminatory action which comes from the Christ self acting in the mind, and therefore the holy Christ mind or the higher mental body does not exercise its dominion in the world of the individual. And because that dominion is not exercised, individuals find themselves walking in darkness even when they desire to walk in the light. And this paradox in human behavior shows clearly to mankind that man must act at the very doorway where energy comes in, at the very doorway of the mind where knowledge comes in, and there perform the ritual of judgment, exercising the power of the goddess of justice, of divine discrimination, being able to sort and divide knowledge and information in this wise, that which can be accepted immediately because it witnesses with the Spirit of God within and is therefore welcomed, that which can be rejected immediately because it is clearly an error and the mind and being of man see it without fail as error substance. And the third classification, that which cannot yet be decided upon, but which must stand aside in a cloakroom of consciousness, awaiting clarification as to its purposes. I say to you all that mankind today stand at the crossroads of the ages, when the great power of the elder world is waiting to break through into manifestation. The elder world of art, when mankind were able to perceive true beauty and see the face of God. Let me say unto you today that all of the work of Leonardo da Vinci, all of the work of Titian, all of the work of the great sculptors and painters, the giants in the world that lived among men in the past and even in the present day, is all a throwback to the age of innocence when the light of God shone clearly through the consciousness of mankind, and the sevenfold energies of the holy Kumaras descended on the great color beams from Venus unto the earth, and the consciousness of men communed with the consciousness of the elder race. I tell you that the abortions that have occurred through the descent of the Luciferian hordes are manifesting all over the planetary body today in the form of unabated violence, in the form of terrible art forms, in the form of destructive activity between men and nations. And all of it is a manifestation of human vanity. All is vanity, all is vanity. And I ask you in God's name, would he have said it of the creation of God? Would he have said it of the creation which God saw that he had made and said, behold, it is very good? Would he have spoken of that creation and called it vanity? I tell you, nay, for he referenced there the terrible activity of malformation, the terrible activity of misqualification within human consciousness. And I say to you today that those who would tell mankind to be all mental, to be stoics, to hold firmly with their mental body and dwell only in it, accepting only intelligence, or those who say that mankind should accept only emotion and emotional substance and be moved by the great power of human love or the power of human hate, they are all wrong, for mankind ought to be able to respond to the great tides of divine love and the power of the light that flows through the mind of man as it was released from the holy Kumaras long ago into manifestation, endowing man with segments of the divine mind and the potential of opportunity whereby he could look forward to receiving a greater and greater kiss of peace from the heart of his own divine presence as he would grow and increase in knowledge of God and of all nature. But nay, they would not have it. Nay, they would prefer instead that they might make of their own individuality a bed where they could lie and in their own aborted consciousness defy the great power of the sacred law that stood above, releasing holy awe and compassion by divine law. Yet they stood askance and would not look, and they chose instead to write a book of their own laws and their own confusion, bringing to mankind a great abusing of opportunity and destructivity and carnality. While the law remains, heaven's law, to say to all, this human law is not correct, it is abject, and it will draw mankind into a whirling vortice, a pit of delusion, a spiral of abject confusion. I say to you then, in the name of the goddess Meru, that all womanhood today and all womankind upon the planetary body ought to recognize the sacredness of the law of innocence and do as God would have men do. Mothers, teach your children God's great law. Mothers, teach your children holy awe. Mothers, teach your children that God's law is without flaw, is without flaw. I say to you then, ladies and gentlemen, that the time has come when illumination's flame must flash forth to the earth and bring new courage to the race, to repudiate all the error they have made and cut themselves free from it and turn to the light and embrace the light as never before. For the light stands waiting, ready and willing. The light stands ready to the heart of man, fill with the great law, and pull back the curtain of divine revelation, showing civilizations of old that your history books do not include, and showing you how that today the true science of the Spirit may endow men with those laws which they have lost, and the power of the lost word to endow nature and nature's God with all that which comes from the heart of the eternal God. For the God of nature also functions under the Godhead, and the Lord God is over all. For I tell you that while there is but one God, There are many forms thereof of manifestation of his unity. And the unity of God is the strength of the many. It is the strength of all. It is the strength and law that will perfect the world and heal the world and sunder man from all that is sin and darkness and shame, and cause him to cleave to his own divine presence and the great I Am name, the name of righteousness and truth and beingness, of consciousness and see-ness, that endows man with the power to be a seer, to see beyond this year into the clear, virtuous manifestation of cosmic power thundering down the caverns of reality and changing them all into the golden caves of cosmic splendor, where the sons of God may at a word crack the very earth wide and see the sun shining and all that is outside divining for now and for all time to come of love and truth and justice and power and strength, and the shining of all that bright and holy wisdom that shall change the world from its delusion and its delusive states into the Christ consciousness that makes of the earth a new heaven and a new earth. I thank you. Sign of the heart, the head, and the hand to you. May the eternal God, by his fire and light, his love divine, ever shine within thy temple, within thy mind, within thy being, until thy frail self shall become the strength of his shining.
L'aurora di bianco vestita, già l'uscio dischiude al gran sole, di già con le rose sue dita, carezza dei fiori lo stuole, commosso da un fremito arcano, intorno al creato già par, e tu non ti desti di nevano, visto qui dolente a cantar. Metti anche tu la veste bianca e schiudi l'uscio al tuo canatore. Non sai la luce manca dove tu sei, nasce
Out of the depths I have called unto thee, and thou hast heard my voice. The proclamation of the holy intent of God was made in the beginning and manifest to the present hour as the virtue of the eternal. I am come then this day to proclaim that which God himself has already proclaimed in his initial creation of all that is, having made man the creature ready to receive the bounties of immortality from the day that he first formed him. There have been, since that time, a tremendous number of malignant forces that have sought to deface the divine image, to erase the pure concepts envisioned by the mind of God in the beginning. They have not succeeded in any wise to tamper with the universe in its own vibratory rate insofar as the spiritual realm is concerned. All that has been done vibrates within physical octaves of consciousness, precious ones, within the realm of the segment of the divine mind which God has loaned unto man, the borrowed consciousness or human mind, and the realm of human emotions. It is true that pollution has occurred in the realm of memory, for the gentle folds of memory have been subjected to a host of pressures, full of mortal delinquency and carnal mindedness. These folds of memory often disgorge themselves, not as a cornucopia of abundance, but as a karmic cup full to overflowing. The awful entity of war, that as a specter of world decimation looms on the scene in this year 1967, is a threat to the beauty of the pure purposes of God for the earth and her evolutions. Security against destruction is always spiritual. For he who can destroy the body cannot touch the soul, nor can he reach his hand into the octaves of higher consciousness. The Eden of God is truly preserved inviolate, and the angel, more than symbol, stands at the doorway of the spiritual octaves of immortal life to seal those octaves against the intrusion of mortal thought and feeling. But heed the law, for the law itself can never, in all eternity, be altered. The law was set up from the beginning of the epoch, and it vibrates in consonance with the Father's spirit of justice and truth, of purity and love, of tenderness and grace, of opportunity for all whom God has created, that they might in due course of time, when the fullness of the time has come, be born in his likeness. It was with this beautiful hope in the beginning that the Father sought to manifest in the Son the fullness of his own brilliance. But all of this, in the face of the world mind today, is changed. For on the screen of men's minds, the specter of fear itself, together with death, looms largely on the horizon as a threat of dire things to come. But what is the greatest protection men have? It is divine love. the love of God. For if the love of God had truly been heeded by mankind universally, it would have been impossible to create the juxtaposition of power which in the world today has turned brother against brother and destructive element against destructive element. It is true that elements of destruction are also opposed to spiritual forces they do not understand or even lend credence to. They feel that all gatherings together of people in the name of God are a threat to purpose because they consider purpose to be a dialectic materialism. And they feel that the gathering of people together for carnal purposes is more to their liking, whereas the gathering of people together for spiritual purposes is simply a misplacing of faith in invisible things which they do not believe exist, nor are able to grant the desires of the people. Throughout history, so-called men of the cloth, Christian men, have made merchandise, in many cases, of the poor of the world. And they have prayed while depriving their neighbors of food and the necessities of life. This lack of love, practiced by great men in the history of the world, has caused many to turn against the faith which these men did not epitomize. For the standards of these men were in name only, and were not in the practice of the presence or the principle of God or of divine love. Why then do people judge outwardly? It is simply because they have no standard to judge inwardly. And when outer faith in people is destroyed, if these people claim to be adherents of the spiritual, these individuals are often prone to discount spirituality as being a figment of the imagination. Let us understand then, one and all, the importance of the power of example in the godly manifestation of truth to the world by the chelas and disciples of the ascended Master. Today, the world measures you, and they measure what you stand for by you. They have no other outward or visible or tangible manifestation by which they can gauge the extent of your inward dedication. How important it is then to the ascended masters that universal ideals shall be upheld rather than personal ones. Personal ideals must be forfeited at times as a point of godly sacrifice to those universal principles in which you ought to strengthen the security of your faith. Unless you believe in the wisdom of the ascended masters and the octaves of light and translate that faith into a valiant action, how can you expect that men will themselves believe who also judge the higher octaves by the manifestation of that which is below? As ascended Master chelas, then, there is given to you today and every day the glorious opportunity of divine love to show by the spiritual power of your love that penetrates every area of your thought and feeling, that you do indeed espouse the cause of faith in God and love for man by actually manifesting in daily conduct that which you have proclaimed by words and by other deeds, which require some supporting evidence to the natural mind of man. It is true, precious ones, if you will only recognize it, that these individuals, once they come to the fold of pure divine love and feel for themselves the pulsations of the heart of God, will no longer challenge or question your own faith, for their own will also be put to the test, and they will be too busy, if they are sincere, accepting and winning the challenges of their own struggle for manifestation of the divine, to intrude into your own affairs. But until they do come, while they are yet tender shoots, or simply vestiges of opportunity in mortal form, let us help them by the manifestation of grace unto them, by tenderness and understanding to one another, and by the manifestation of all that is kindred to the divine idea. Where is brotherhood except it be in manifestation? And where is opportunity except it be accepted? Opportunity that is not recognized as such is a sad state of affairs, for it involves the energies of the karmic board, of the ascended masters, of your divine presence, of many benign individuals who have nurtured your life from its early inception unto the present day, and from world service for which you are accountable, the provision of food, of clothing, articles of dress, and public necessities. The world domain, as you have found it today, has also bestowed upon you its own opportunities, many of which have been bypassed by mankind. It is a great tragedy, even from the personal level, when individuals fail to accept their opportunities and know that the challenges represented by the opportunities are challenges to be won. The oneness of life, which comes about through the beauty of the divine shining in the mind and consciousness, are so lovely as to be indescribable, even in the ascended master's octave. And therefore I want to point out to you that many times only the feeling of the divine can be conveyed, for words fail utterly to describe the great love tides of God that betimes gush forth into the consciousness of man as inspiration, as courage to face a test, as the conquering spirit that decides that nothing else is of worth except to overcome. All of these things must be considered in the light of their own reality. You cannot consider divine truth from the human level, as mankind are wont to do, to split it into theological conceptions and decisions based upon intellectual speculation. You must consider the reality of God as a tangible, eternal, immortal gem of consciousness, which is imparted to you as a treasure, a many-splendored thing, charging into your world and consciousness the essence of its own quality of immortality and beauty. And how could there exist forever conditions of depravity, of ignorance, of shadow, of darkness, of pain, of unhappiness, of sensuality, of selfishness and greed? How could these things exist forever and happiness abide in the universe? It cannot be. For in the universe there must exist the power of infinite love, and the power of that love to proclaim itself to all generations with the wondrous concept of immortality, that in declaring I am that I am is also proclaiming its own nature unto man. That men are insensate to the divine is a tragedy of personal dimension, and may God help the world to be able to remove from their mind the screen of darkness and shadow that has opaqued by a cloud of ignorance all of the beauty of the light of God that never fails. The great white brotherhood today, as it stands guard for the world against the hordes of war arrayed upon the planetary body in many places, is continuing an action of sanity and balance to the world, which the world knows not. And little do they dream of the pain they will be inflicting upon countless lives if they unleash that destructive force which even now is being held in abeyance. They think that they are doing it by mortal decisions and by mortal acts, that some restraint is being exercised by mortal man. But when have mortals been able to show that they have restraint in the world? Seldom indeed. And history is replete with examples of mortal tragedy. But if all of the dead of the world, killed in all the wars of the world, could stand today upon this earth in one great company, they would repudiate with the fire of Almighty God and His truth all the glories of war, and show to the world that it is a destructive and empty vessel that is presided over by the old man with the sickle, who cuts down in the flower of their youth the best opportunities for generations, and for generations unborn provides not hope but hopelessness in manifestation. For it is a very hopeless thing to the world to view in all ages that they have not yet come to the place where they can resolve their differences by the power of divine love and understanding. The world is broad. Its rolling plains provide sustenance for billions of lives, and there are places of great beauty upon earth with water and with the abundance of opportunity. Yet men are not content to live beneath their fig tree and understand that divine love is the power that turns this world, and that will win for every individual the great opportunity of universal love to enter once again into the heart of divine imagery, where the individual will image the divine in the self, and the divine in the self will come into manifestation as the power of that love that framed the worlds in hope, that hope should forever make glad those who were given consciousness by that hope. Consciousness is the gift of God, and it is the gift of divine love. And without divine love, men themselves are tormented by their own struggles that seek to expand the consciousness they have in the world domain without understanding how they shall expand it. Because there is an impulse to expansion in consciousness, men take it wrongly, and they desire to express egotistically and to be recognized by mankind for their achievement. How much wiser it would be if they would recognize that inasmuch as they were created by divine love, that divine love is itself the opportunity of expansion and the energy of expansion that will fill their heart's chalice with the essence of itself, until there will be no room in the inn of being for mortal thoughts and feelings, but only for the expansion of that kingdom that without end will teach brother to know the love of the Father, and thus to know the love of brotherhood in action in the world of form. I have come this day to strengthen the bonds of your faith in the divine, in the invisible, but often readily apparent manifestation of love from the cup within that overflows in the world domain with the power of spiritual example. This messenger today proclaimed the innocence of God, and I affirm it. I affirm the innocence of God as the purposes of all creation. And may the spirit of the holy innocence that once was abroad in this land and all lands once again grace this earth, that the children of God's heart may live and grow with Herculean strength into manifestation, that strong bodies and minds rich with the lore of the Spirit may again bring to the earth those supermen of consciousness that are indeed able to retain the gift of God's love that was given to them in the beginning. May they be able to retain it and express it. And may you today, who are in the vanguard of the preparers of the coming age, also be able to hold the vision of divine love when the world reeks with hate and warfare and confusion. May you be able to keep your heads against the strong wickedness of the world that seeks to dethrone you. May you be able to keep the bond of cosmic harmony with one another, because it is divine love expressing to any part of life. And truly that love will go on forever. Whether or not you shall go with it and go with God as he goes is a decision you must make. For God will not force it upon you. He but gives you the opportunity. And this is the life that you have. But the life that is to come will be that where love is victorious. And love will exist forever. For love and God are synonymous. I thank you. May the peace of God, which passeth all understanding, keep your hearts and minds anchored in the Christ consciousness, eternal in unswerving purpose, and rejoicing in the concepts of the faith. Gracious ones, I come to you today in the fullness of the victory that the light is, which victory surrounds you one and all at all times through the radiation of your own beloved mighty I Am presence. This is the presence of life that beats your heart, that sustains in you every thought and feeling. Even those thoughts and feelings, precious ones, that are misqualified by wrong substance are sustained through God's energy. Therefore, I say to you, it is necessary that you should recognize how quickly you ought to slough off all thoughts and feelings that are not in accord with divine love and cast them from you as you would the plague. This is an expression which you use, which I wish also to use to affirm to you the great cosmic need for mankind to hold themselves posited in the great God flame that is within themselves as an extension of the magnificence of the Holy Christ consciousness and higher mental body of every individual that comes into the light and the vibratory action thereof. The light is the means for the freedom of man, and by the light all things were made. But those things that were made by the light are all benign, and there is no darkness or shadow or human creation that can possibly exist in the light. For the light is the substance of divine faith, by which God has also hoped for the manifestation of himself in nature and in man. Understand then, precious ones, that you must repose in the divine idea and learn to escape by a mental leap from all thoughts and feelings that are less than the perfection of your infinite divine presence. The presence is the master key by which you will find your freedom, and all manifestations of human thought are but degradations which pull down the great master key thought and plan into the realm of the human, where man seeks to change that plan according to his own idea. We call this a tampering with the divine plan, and mankind seem to feel from time to time that their tampering is wholly justifiable in the light of free will. We do not deny that God has given man free will. We simply affirm that the only free will that man has been given is his own free will received from God as God's free will. This is the gift of God. In other words, God has given to man his free will, that is God's free will, to create within the light domain all that is perfection and the fullness of the divine plan. Man has, through acceptance of human ideas and ideas misqualified by other men, thwarted the divine plan and changed it again and again into a form of bondage where the light is in effect brought to its knees to bow to mankind, rather than having mankind bow his knees to the light. You must understand, gracious ones, that I do not imply in this statement that mankind has any power to subjugate the light of God or Almighty God unto human plans. It is simply that through the key of the will, which man has misshaped according to human ideas, that the light in effect is brought low and misqualified and becomes shadow. But the moment this occurs, at that very instant, there is also another superior law which is called into manifestation. And this superior law is the law of dissolution. For when an individual takes the light energy of God and misqualifies it, because the nature of the light is always perfection, and is always on the ascendancy, and is always raised up, and is always buoyant, the moment that that sheath of misqualified substance is placed around the light by mortal men, the law of God demands the dissolution of that substance. Therefore it starts from that moment to dissolve, and it will ultimately dissolve all qualities that are less than the perfection of God, and bring them once again back to the sun for repolarization. The damage that is done in the human octave by misqualified substance all occurs before the shadowed substance has been stripped of its light energy. Therefore, men must understand that they are held accountable by the karmic board for the misuse of all energy which they receive. For there is no other source of energy, precious ones, than your own mighty I Am presence, which is the same source of energy which all mankind derive their strength from. Let men understand then that in order to do the will of God, they must relinquish all thought and feeling that is less than the perfection of God. Now you may say, these are words which are easy enough for you to utter, but most difficult of us to execute. I say to you that you have the same God-given free will that we have in the higher octaves of light, and it is but your misuse of that free will and the way you have tenaciously stuck to mortal thought and feeling that you are today in the state of consciousness in which you find yourself. From time to time, individuals lament the fact that they are unable to find a course of freedom or peace or happiness, and they wish that there were some master key whereby they could find release from all of the misshapen and misqualified energy that manifests in their world. Well, I tell you, precious ones, that key is available to every man, woman, and child upon this planet. But I want to point out to all of you that there are none upon this planet so fortunate as those of you who receive these dictations from our octave and are able to have the buoyant, dancing, joyous energy of God delivered into your world as a mighty stream of purifying substance. The world today does not know how to bring themselves into a realm of mental and feeling freedom, where their feelings can be free from the weight of mortal oppression. Neither does mankind understand how to have their freedom from mental oppression and depression. But you, precious ones, are given the great tides of cosmic energy that lift you up out of human doldrums and human thought and feeling into the joy of the divine presence. I tell you, it is a remarkable occurrence and an occasion of great blessing for which you also ought to rejoice again and again. Mankind in the outer realm, coming, shall we say, for the first time, or even in successive times, to hear one of our dictations, are scarcely aware of what is transpiring. They are like unto children, saying, we have piped unto you, and you have not danced. For I say to you, precious ones, they do not always know just what is expected of them when they are given the privilege, which they sometimes do not recognize as such, to hear our words. They seem to be impelled by the fact that because a human instrument is employed in the delivery mechanism, that this in some way makes it less than divine. I tell you, gracious ones, where would these people be if they had to rely upon their senses, which are dead in trespasses and sins, in their senses, which are wedded to mortal thought and feeling, and are confined to limited human octaves, to hear our voices? I tell you, not in 1,000,000 years would they be able to develop their senses to the point where they could come in contact with these great swirling cosmic energies of freedom. Why do you think this is so? It is because until individuals are willing to relinquish their hold upon mortal thought and feeling and mortal designs, they cannot know the great tides of freedom which these messengers know, and which are given unto them in order that they may act to convey into your world the great tides of our spiritual energy. We come to you today, then, to cut you free from all mortal viciousness, from all wrong thoughts and feelings that have lingered upon this planetary body for centuries and are the very essence of the pollution of mortal dust. Think of that for a moment. What is the meaning of that statement that I have made? Let us analyze it and see. All substance upon the planet was created by the Word and by the light of God. Is there then any quality of sootiness, or any quality of blackness, or any quality that will stain or mar in the radiation of the Word? But what of dust? what of little grains of sand that have accumulated what amounts to pure dirt around themselves. This dirt then is very fine, and when it is swept with great vigor by a broom, it clouds the atmosphere. You recognize then that this, according to some men's interpretation, is the substance out of which God is supposed to have created man's body. I call to your attention that the earth itself is full of pollutants, and that these have in the main emanated from human thought and feeling, from the degradation and blackness that is in mankind's hearts. This degradation has been transferred through a natural organic process, and a process whereby energy that seems to be invisible is transmitted into the visible realm, where it comes into outer visible manifestation. Therefore, even the dust of the earth today does not resemble the dust of the earth that existed in the days when Adam and Eve, according to the Scriptures, were formed by the Word of God. Let men understand then that pristine men and women had greater longevity and greater attunement with their divine presence than the bulk of mankind do today. The world today has turned to a realm of materialism and to things, to possess persons, to possess places, to possess things. Men desire to own the land, but how can they own that which they no longer can dwell upon? When men shall shed the cocoon of the body and find themselves a naked soul, what then can they own, saving the graces that they were given by God, which they have lost because they have not taken them up as options, but have left them to molder away through the misuse of energy by the individual? Do you see then that the gifts of God and the gift of life that God has given to mankind is a precious and tender thing, that when it becomes misqualified, even though of divine origin, by mortal thought and feeling, it must follow the pattern of disillusion and return to the heart of the great central sun, and therefore it cannot then be a permanent gift to any life stream. Only in the heavens, in the eternal realms, are eternal gifts given to mankind, and neither moth can eat, nor thieves break in and steal away. For God has conveyed these realities to mankind, and they live in man forever and forever. Today, then, I say to you, awake from the lethargy of the senses, and understand that the cosmic circle and sword of blue flame which I wield is a tangible instrument for the freeing of man. It is an instrument which the world does not understand, but it can be employed by a simple invocation to me, to call unto me in my divine service to life, and ask me to put my cosmic circle of blue flame substance around unwanted thoughts, around unwanted desires, around unwanted persons, around undesirable places, or any condition whatsoever that manifests any form of imperfection. When my circle of cosmic light comes around that substance, there is an instantaneous power of the divine Word of God that invokes the light of God in its pristine purity that existed in those atoms of substance, and there are no things formed whatsoever that do not have atoms. And then, when those atoms find that the power of the light is drawn out from within them, the shadows of imperfection are on the instant transmuted, and there is an effective release of the electrons to draw back to the heart of the great central sun the pollutions and the impurities that have existed in that particular specific form, individual, state of consciousness or place. I tell you that my cosmic circle and my sword of blue flame as dual weapons for the cause of man's freedom are some of the greatest instruments ever employed for the freedom of this planet. And mankind would do well if they would understand that and call us into action again and again. I think sometimes that individuals are prone to feel that they do not wish to bother us. They sometimes seem to feel that it is an imposition upon the ascended hosts to call us into action, or that we should be drawn down from our positions of holiness in the heart of God. This is an awful state of consciousness, beloved ones, and a complete and total delusion. We live to serve, and we live to be called into action. And I tell you that it is a marvelous thing when students understand that you cannot and do not call us into action nearly enough. For if you did, you would not have the conditions occurring in your world which do from time to time repetitiously occur. Won't you please be seated? This radiation of the cosmic circle and sword of blue flame is for the freedom of man. In the name of heaven, beloved ones, do you think we would rather have you remain in your error? Would we rather have the vibratory action of sinister strategies continuing to act and function? Do you think we want 1 minute's more delay than necessary in the fulfillment of the divine plan? I tell you nay, and I tell you all the hosts of heaven stand ready and willing to be invoked by mankind. It is one of the greatest tragedies of this age that individuals should believe the soft and subtle projection of the psychic forces that say, do not disturb the master. The master perhaps is sleeping. The master perhaps is away. He is involved in great conferences. These great beings cannot be disturbed by little people, for these great beings wish to do the things that they are doing, which require their fullest attention, and we must be careful not to disturb them. What do you think, beloved ones, occurs when we see the awful conditions of the world continuing to worsen? Do you think then that we would rather have those conditions worsen? Do you think that Almighty God would desire to have the perpetuation of these awful and frightful conditions that occur in the world today continue? I tell you, nay. Invoke, invoke, and invoke, and invoke again and again, and do not fear to invoke. I say to you, fear not to invoke. For it is far better that men should fear not to invoke than that they should fear to invoke. I say, drill this into your consciousness and watch how we will function through the body of God among ye all, and through all of our students in the field, wherever they are, when individuals shall have the spiritual boldness to assert their own cosmic regeneration, that the resurgence of Almighty God may once again come into the fore. Do you think that there are other organizations in large numbers that know about me, or know about this activity, or know about the cosmic hosts as ye do? They are few, I tell you, upon this planet. And I want you to understand that it is necessary that the dissemination of this knowledge be made to mankind so that we may be put to use. The quicker we are put to use, the quicker human travail and suffering will come to an end, and the quicker a fruition of spiritual glory can come to manifestation upon this planet. So long as men and women are steeped in the degradation and distillation of witches' brew, of psychic accumulations, of negation, and of all that is directed against them, they cannot move into the great areas of freedom where the light of God that never fails can show them how to walk everywhere as victors and as living Christs in manifestation. I am reminded now, as I bring this dictation to a close, of the episode when the young man lay frothing at the mouth on the ground, and the disciples had attempted again and again to cast out the demon from that boy. I tell you, they exerted themselves to the fullest, and they lacked the faith, and they lacked the knowledge of our octave of light. If my cosmic circle and sword of blue flame had been invoked around that boy by any one of those disciples, they would have found that that demon would have left on the instant and would not have remained for a second. This was the power of light which Jesus himself invoked. He invoked that energy of the blue flame, and it immediately fulfilled the destiny God intended it to do. These laws are in one sense almost mechanical, but unless mankind knows that they must invoke them and do so with a tender and contrite heart, with a loving heart, and with a definite amount of cosmic faith in our existence, they cannot produce these miracles which the light will produce gladly for any son of heaven who will do so, who will call upon us, who will do so, who will understand, who will do so and know that the law that is not in action is not the law at all. The law must be in action, and you must become that law in action. You must become that law in action now. The time is short. Enter in, therefore, into that spirit of God victory that invokes from the cosmic hosts all of the God qualities for which your souls hunger and thirst. Thus shall we see many among mankind brought to the fount of freedom, and you will see that large numbers of people will come to be delivered from the conditions in the world which cause them such untold distress and cause all mankind a continuation of problems. The day of deliverance is at hand, and it does not lie in your octave. It lies in ours, and it is by attunement with our octave, and it is by shunning the octaves of human consciousness that you will find your freedom. In God's name, awake to this fact before it is too late, and use the energy which we have given you, for it was given you that it might be used, and you are intended to use it. I thank you for your attention, and these simple words will produce miracles in your world if you will only put them to use. I challenge you to do it in the name of Almighty God and by the Spirit of victory, which I also am. I thank you. Beloved, mighty Astrea has asked me during the playing of this music, and I shall ask all of you to put all of your old thoughts of hatred, of disappointment, of fear, or of repugnance toward any life stream upon the planet in the violet flame. Astrea asks that all thoughts and feelings against any human being shall be cast into the violet flame. Astrea asks that all resentment or rebellion or sense of mortal contamination, even a sense of man's projections and a sense of the psychic world shall be put into the violet flame. Astrea asks that we shall seek to live in the Christ consciousness here and now that is above all the things that are of the astral creation. She asks that all things that we have that are less than the perfection of Jesus Christ himself, perfection of the consciousness of God, shall be put into the violet flame. That it is the desire of the hierarchy to see this center sealed in the immaculate light of God, that every person in the center that walks from one side of the house to the other will be a living Christ walking, that every thought of the mind of each individual, if it were opened up and its contents thrown onto a white sheet, would show everyone that all thoughts are Christ's thoughts, that every thought is for the accomplishment of Christ's purposes in this age, and that these things should be done in order today to give the cup of cold water in the name of God to every son of God on this planet. my children, O my children, O my children. This is the voice of holy wisdom, spoken to every soul, as God himself calls to those whom he has created to return unto him and to the fount of his flame of illumination. Darkness is over the world because the world has loved the darkness, and the light they have not loved, neither have they remained in the light, nor dwelled in the light. But they have made shadow and darkness their home, and they have reaped the rewards of the seeds of gray shadows. Now then, while the world goes on in their present rate of decline from the high spiritual office that gave them origin, the power of the flame of illumination from the heart of God has not shrunk, but it has arisen to new rates of vibrations of infinite intelligence. This is because the nature of God is progressive, and there is no turning back in the consciousness of God. You have heard it said of old to kings, victory unto the king. I say to you today, in the name of the living presence of life within you that beats your hearts, victory unto the King and his holy wisdom by which he has framed the worlds and purposed for all life everywhere the glories of his cosmic purpose. Today, when the nations are trembling and the people's hearts are failing them for fear as to what is coming unto the earth, the power of God is advancing, and it has never retreated, and it never will. For wisdom and her children are taught by the fount of the infinite, and the infinite cannot retreat or go back. The infinite, by reason of its nature and very rate of vibration, must move forward constantly into the pulsations of the ineffable light. Those individuals who elect to stand back and to fail to accept the high offices and honors of life which life is given unto them must remain children of the shadow, because they have forfeit their spiritual birthright and the powers and energies which belong unto the masters of wisdom who bask in the flame of wisdom. Wisdom has her children upon the planet, it is true, but they are presently few beside the multitudes who go the broad way that leadeth unto destruction. But wisdom shall not say to those who have gone backward, we are without resources to call you also back toward the sheepfold of cosmic love. Therefore, from time to time, the karmic board and the cosmic councils do meet in solemn assembly, and on those occasions the frequent conversations which are held and deliberations which take place are for the return of the wanderers back to the heart of cosmic purpose. And therefore, when I sounded out the word of God at the beginning of this address, children, O children, come home, it was for that purpose and for that purpose alone. Do you understand then that it is the call that compels the answer? And we will continue to work with mankind, and our spirit will strive, as long as cosmic law permits it, with the flesh of mankind, which is of itself of the nature of the grass of the field. It flourisheth for a time, and then it passeth away. For behold, only the infinite wisdom and wisdom's patterns are worthy of endurance. The goddess Meru and I are familiar with the responsibility which comes to those charged with the keeping of a root race. We are also aware of the tremendous responsibility of the great divine director and others of the ascended masters who have a responsibility most solemn toward this planet and its people. We are aware also that mankind have but a small idea and a puny concept of the intelligence and efforts made by these great cosmic beings and spiritual avatars whom God has sent unto the planet. Mankind do not realize the depth of the riches of the wisdom of these great God-free beings. They do not recognize it because they have not yet recognized the great divine intent of the Father for themselves. The Father's love and His infinite intelligence that is within them is corrective to the last farthing, and therefore when individuals are suffering from some form of physical disease or mental disturbance, often one call will do it, and there is immediately an action of power and flow that goes forth from the heart of God and the God within the life stream of the individual that causes a pulsation of correction to occur whereby the flesh form has the error in it corrected on the instant. There are times, of course, when individuals fall short of the mark of their desires for themselves, and they seem unable to rise above physical problems and mental problems or spiritual testings which are brought unto them. Let them not despair, for there is also some virtue in their failure to be able to cast out the demon, because they are then able to recognize limitation for what it is, a measure of a man's externalized capacity to do, and if they will follow through on it, and rather than despair or say the deity has failed me, they will consider that they have failed themselves to externalize the necessary requisites of the law in their own world so that they could be ready for any emergency. They will then set about the serious business of producing the internal intelligence of God within themselves as a living pulsating flame from day to day, hour to hour, moment to moment, that will produce for them on the instant the flash of divine intelligence that knows the perfect requirements of the law and is able to execute them as well as to know them. Now then, as we were speaking concerning South America and our enormous responsibility, we want to once again say to you rather sadly that there are terrible forces at work in South America today concerned with and connected with the total situation there. The greed of many of the land owners and landholders is excessive and has not been lessened because of world tensions and dangers and problems confronting them now. The peril and poverty of the poor is even more frightening today in the light of contrast. And the situation involving Catholicism and communism, as they seem to vie with one another and yet at times are allies, is also a very frightening condition to the world order and to the scheme that is now being unfolded to take over South America and crumble away the very bulwark of freedom in this hemisphere. I say to all of you then that calls ought to be made for South America and for the people there who are indeed unworthy when judged by the lords of karma and by outer circumstances to receive the great inheritance which it is the desire of God to externalize there. Many of these people are, of course, ignorant. Many of them are unwilling to be taught, and many of them are rebellious. whereas multitudes are lethargic. We call then today to the great God flame of holy illumination in our retreat here at Lake Titicaca to expand and expand and expand out into this continent and to produce a spiritual forte of infinite intelligence in those who are unillumined, so that they may be able to discern between what is right action and what is wrong action, that they may be able to respond to the ministrations and life waves, to the pulsations of joy and the pulsations of honor which come forth from the heart of God and flow forth to heal and prepare the way for the great root race to be established here. We urge upon all who hear our voice and who are able to understand the meaning of union, to enter into no spirit of complacency, but right here in this world, in this hemisphere where you are, to see what you can do for these people by making inward calls. The answer lies not in bread alone, nor in physical sustenance, but in spiritual energy which must be charged forth in God's name to act and to reconstitute these people, that they may be prepared to receive the grandeur and glory of the golden age to come. Won't you please be seated? The hour is coming, and now is, spoken by the Master, saying that those who were in the graves would hear his voice and live, is fulfilled through the office of the Lord Mahachohan, as he again and again breathes into incoming children and youth the renewal of the breath of life that causes them once again to become a living soul, that they may pick up the threads of endeavor where they left off, and by the honor of divine acceptance take the gift of life and begin to repair the breaches in the wall of being, so that they as individuals may stand as mighty chalices into which the communion spirit of God and of Christ and of the Holy Grail may be poured. The efforts of men are not in vain, but the efforts of God are not either. The efforts of men made in the right direction are made in the direction of the divine ideal. And when men work solely for their own glorification, for their own earthly purposes, they do despite to the cosmic purposes for which they came into the world, but many of them know it not. And therefore we say, with the Christ of old, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. They have crucified Christ afresh, and they have put him to an open shame by denial in this age of all the potential of God that is within them. They have not recognized the grandeur of life itself that is within. They have let the puny molds of their flesh form become restrictive to the spirit that is within, and they have failed then to exercise dominion over the earth which God gave unto Adam from the beginning. And the dominion of Adam was amplified in Christ 10,000-fold. And therefore, as in Adam all die, so in Christ shall all be made alive. And the life that is in the Christ can only be transferred into a holy grail. And a vessel unto God can only be made holy by recognition of the pristine order of purpose which came forth, as did the order of Melchizedek in the beginning, to transform the cosmic idea in physical manifestation and bring forth a paradise of perfection upon earth, that men might be schooled for cosmic purposes, that at the end of an embodiment they might indeed come to the place where the ascension would be the goal, and where they would obtain their victory, even as Enoch did of old. I say to you that the holy wisdom of God has been kept from the churches by their own adherents, by their own pastorate, and by their own teachings. They have aborted and thwarted the plan of God again and again upon this earth, and therefore also of the Babylonian empire, of religion itself, we may truly say, Babylon, Babylon, thou art fallen, and how great is the fall of that city, and how great is the smoke of their burning. And the burning shall come to pass, because the word of God shall go forth as a living flame. And behold, the dead men's bones in the valley of Ezekiel shall rise up, and they shall be clothed with flesh, and they shall live. For the word is the power by which men are transformed. And the word, I am, shall be made manifest as the power of God that burns in the bush of mortal consciousness, and is not consuming it, but is consuming the dross of thought, and the dross of wrong effort, and the dross of imperfection, and transmuting it into the perfection of the light as an activity of Christ's consciousness made manifest upon earth in preparation for the second coming of Christ to this planet. I say to you all then, beware of those who say that Christ has already come, that he is here, or that he is there. For I tell you that the kingdom of God is within you, and unless it be externalized within you, unless you yourselves drink into that kingdom, unless you drink of that fruit of the vine in remembrance of me, that is, of the Christ consciousness, you do but live in vain, and your life is vanity of vanities, saith the preacher. And behold, there is in it naught that is not vain. Therefore, your life must be transformed from day to day, and preparation must be made by yourselves, by cosmic effort, by the noblesse oblige of the Spirit that will make of your physical vessels, your mental vessels, your vessel of memory, and all of your fourfold identity as well as your sevenfold identity, the perfect Holy Grail into which God can pour the communion power of himself in order to build here upon earth the kingdom of God among men. It shall be established, God will do it, and you will see it, and you will eschew evil, and you will pursue good, and the Lord shall take victory over all darkness and shadow. And behold, those that remain in the shadow shall be empty rather than full, and they shall be as shards, and they shall be as empty gourds, and there shall be only a rattle there, which shall have no meaning, and a sound in a drumbeat, which is meaningless. And behold, they shall go down into the gray caves, into the shadowed realm of darkness, and they shall cry for deliverance, and there shall be none to hear them, for they have chosen the pathway of darkness and not of light. And they shall cry out, and none shall hear them. And behold, it shall come to pass that when the Sesophic round of cosmic mercy shall have passed itself full well, then once again the ear of God shall hear them. But behold, it shall be as millions of years that shall have passed, and they shall have cried as the mewing of a kitten for its mother, and there shall be none to nourish them, and there shall be none to comfort them. And they shall see that the Lord God whom they have forsaken has also forsaken them in fulfillment of the necessity of progress, which must go on. Therefore I say, let those who will bask in atheism, let those who will bask in agnosticism, let those who will bask in the comfortless areas of mortal thought and feeling, but let those who are able to hear the voice of God hear his voice, and be quickened, and behold, illumination shall flash forth in these, and a new order will I build, saith the Lord, and that new order shall be as the coming of the east to the south, and behold, South America shall flourish, and a new and beautiful civilization be builded here. The wildernesses shall bloom as a rose, and behold, mankind shall build great cities and endeavors and health, and the glow of the sun and the fire of the Spirit shall enable men to build temples of harmony and joy, and the seventh root race shall flourish and come in. And behold, I will transform the planet after the din has died down that mankind have made, as the beating of a pewter fork upon a pewter plate. Behold, I say, the time has come when men must awaken, for if they will not awaken, they shall lose all opportunity that they now have, and there shall be left unto them no comfort, for they will have turned against the purposes of the age, and the purposes of the ages, and the glory that is God, the glory that cometh out of the east, the glory of the sun, the pulsation of holy wisdom they will have repudiated, for their physical wisdom, their common intelligence will become as naught before God. And as the whirlwind will the Lord depart, and he will blow them as chaff before the wind, and they shall be cast into outer darkness, for they have chosen it. Behold, I, Meru, have spoken, and the word is gone forth. Let those who have an ear hear, for the day of salvation is at hand. Let no man be afraid to be nourished by the Divine Mother and by wisdom's children. I thank you. O thou great illuminator, thy flames come forth unto us. Extinguish it not within our hearts, and let it glow. Plight to us our troth. Bestow upon us the cosmic flame of effort. Let nobility and honor burn upon our heart's altar, and let truth stand enshrined there. And help us when we pray to understand those things which we should pray for. Thou great beginning and ending of all things. In Christ's name to thee do we address ourselves. As thy children, we come in hope. Sign of the heart, the head, and the hand to you. May the peace of your presence abide with you wherever you are, wherever you go. May the glorious peace from your presence flow. Days of service and nights of rest. May the peace of your presence keep you blessed. Sign of the heart, the head, and the hand to you. Lord Gautama's cosmic cross of white fire, watch between thee and me as we are absent the one from the other, and ever present with God.